You ready, Warren?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Welcome to Puzzle Dungeon Workshop. I'm Direct Sun. Today, I'm joined by a valued voice in our community. Someone who values other creators, wants to see them flourish and shine. When asked what he was going to do about the ogre towering over him, how he was going to blind this thing, he said, I cast light. It's Warren D. Hey, Warren.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Great to be here. And yeah, that's literally exactly what I did in a dungeon I was in. I got to fire off the one spell, and we actually did blind that ogre, and got to save the day. And by save the day, I mean let our hirelings hack it apart
Heck
with
yeah.
a bunch of axes. So that's the
I
advantage
just
of hiring woodsmen.
I just guessed it was an ogre. Was that actually an ogre?
It was ogre-like. I think it was in Miranda Elkin's Nightwick Abbey, so I think it was a grotesquely enlarged devil man who had supped on the flesh of men for many generations and had grown to ogre size. So
Whoa.
yeah, so
That kind of monster actually reminds me of a monster that I saw spoilers in the movie Barbarian. Have you watched that movie?
no, I haven't watched Barbarian, but it seems like a movie that I should watch, or that is probably on some old school list of new movies that you should see if you like old school games.
It's on an old school list that was on a Reddit thread. Someone had posted a question. This was like a few years back now, which is what caught my eye to it. They said, "Hey, um, what are some examples of good dungeon crawls in cinema?" And so they listed out a bunch of different things. Like I went through the comment threads. I gathered up all the ones that I wanted to watch. I watched them, and then I wrote up a blog post about how much they felt like dungeon crawls. And
Oh, that's
Barbarian
cool.
was by far my favorite movie, and also I think the most dungeon crawl feely.
Yeah, because a lot of movies they kind of shortcut the sort of crawl aspect of that. You get kind of like scenes in vast hallways, but you never really get like the sort of decision by decision. I guess another one would be I'm such a scaredy cat. I haven't seen too many horror movies, but I guess another one would be like Descent,
That
and
was on the
then
list too. That was really good. Very much
yeah,
felt like a cave crawl,
and then
100%.
what was called like So Above as Below, where they're lost in the Paris catacombs, I think, is
I
another.
haven't seen that one, but have
Oh
you?
yeah. No, 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 but we were I think it's another one that Miranda recommended as so it takes place in the Paris catacombs and this group's down there, and I think they're supposed to be just following some rumor about um, a cult or something, and half the group thinks it's fake, the other half is like archaeology students, and then of course, they like fall through a hole or something and then have to work their way back out.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to watch it now. As above, so below, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds about right. Cool.
I think you could just Google movie about satanic cultist in the Paris catacombs, and you'll find it.
I'll take a look. So, you mentioned Nightwick Abbey as
Hmm.
where you had casted light on that troll, and I noticed on your blog, icastlight.blogspot.com,
Yeah,
that you say that your current campaign is Nightwick Abbey. Is that the
yeah,
same one, or are you running Nightwick Abbey now?
yeah. So we are currently as a player, I'm currently in the 136th session of Nightwick Abbey that Miranda, the creator of Nightwick Abbey, she runs. And you can find her at In Places Deep. She also has a Patreon where she's running Nightwick Abbey, as well as another fantastic campaign world of hers, Kikania. But if you join the Nightwick Patreon, you can get an early draft of Nightwick Abbey, this mega dungeon that she's been running for about 10 years now. And so I've been running that for my own players. So after I progressed far enough in the campaign online, I really felt like I couldn't spoil anything else for myself. So I turned around to give it a whirl as well, and I'm on my 45th session of that uh,
Wow.
with my players here locally.
Yeah, because you probably weren't worried about spoilers because like so much had changed since you first got there, right?
Yeah, the really, I mean, it's been sort of a lesson in watching how you can take the same setting, the same adventure module, or the same dungeon, and really the play can diverge quite rapidly. You know, you see some of the same stuff, but rooms and levels take on entirely different meaning with different groups, and just all sorts of strange stuff can happen that wildly diverges from what I'm doing in the game I play in versus the game I DM in.
I think I've read a little bit about Nightwick Abbey
Mhm.
from the creator's blog. If I'm remembering correctly, the dungeon kind of shifts, right? Rooms move around.
Yeah, yeah, Miranda's made a great mechanism in there. A lot of the dungeons laid out on geomorphs, and this allows for the dungeon to, I guess I'm starting to speak from a running perspective, but allows you to shift the dungeon according to certain triggers. And while at first that might sound very confusing, the Nightway, the geomorph setup is quite convenient. And once you kind of get used to doing it, it's quite easy to do. And even my players have really enjoyed it, and I think it's a really great mechanism for controlling some of the choices because it is an Abbey of the Undead. So you would think, oh, I'm just going to take my cleric down there and a little turn undead, which is at will and unlimited, except for like once per encounter. However you note that it could be quite powerful, but that's one of the triggers potentially. So
That's neat.
you really got to make a decision about what you want to
Yeah.
do there.
They have another resource that they need to use sparingly because they know that it's going to change their environment dramatically.
Yeah, exactly. You can cut off your own exit. So
Neat. That's fun. Uh, so you mentioned that the players interpreted some stuff differently. Your players did than when you were in the same situation. Was there something that really surprised you how it went down for them versus your party?
I think it's that just there was one sort of artifact that's in the Abbey that my players have done something radically different with, and now it's resulted in this sort of minor NPC that I had to develop who started out as just it was a random event that I had rolled on because I went at one point on my blog and sort of reinterpreted the sort of regional events tables that have been famous throughout D&D, and so there was somebody being burned for being a witch or being tried for being a witch, and they decided to save this person. But lo and behold, this person's ended up with this artifact and now has become this major NPC uh, that the players have sort of have a quasi friendship with. So they're trying to figure out whether this NPC is going to be a friend or foe. But the NPC has been slowly sort of amassing resources. So now they're,
Wow.
yeah, so my players have been kind of off doing other things or in the region, and now the NPC is gotten a little bit scarier. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, see what
That's
they do
cool.
with that.
Have you been like feeding this information back to Miranda?
Yeah, I'll tell her like bits and pieces about what's going on, or you know, the game that we run. She also had a group of hers, of her own that had delved Nightwick for many years. And even our group that I play with is even diverged from them. So it's, she, I think, enjoys, I think, seeing how all the people have made so many different choices than the ones she had anticipated.
I know I'm asking you a lot of questions about Miranda's Mega
Oh
Dungeon.
yeah, you should reach out and have her on. She can tell you a lot.
I think I should do that. I'm asking you the questions though because yeah, I'm genuinely interested. It sounds like a really fun time. Where did you say folks could go to see more of that?
Yeah, if you just In Places Deep at blogspot.com is a great way to get hooked up with Miranda's blog. And then on Patreon, if you look up In Places Deep, you'll find her and all the Nightwick information there.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you, Warren, uh, have your own blog, iCast Light.
Hmm.
And when did the blog start?
Oh man.
Been around a while.
Let's see. I have to even go look at my own blog to find that out. This is the fun of it. So it started back in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, I guess, to place it, it was sort of the end of the G plus explosion where Google had shut down G plus and or was about to, and I'd been really inspired by a lot of the sort of old school scene that I saw there. So I was like, you know what, I'll just start my own blog and get involved in this. You know, I was really influenced by Azirian's Garden, Goblin Punch, a lot of the All Dead, or not All Dead Generations, that's Dungeon of Signs is a new blog, but Dungeon of Signs, you know, a lot of the classics. And so I thought it was really great that we had all this inspiring thought, but I was sort of thought it was good to start a blog that just maybe reflected the play that was happening at my own table. Sometimes I think with blogging, perhaps everyone thinks that they have to have some great idea or be, you know, the next voice in gaming, when I really think that we still don't have a lot of people who are just talking about what they're playing at their own table.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes people, you know, maybe think they have to, you know, come up with something that is just so novel and so out there, when really, if you simply just start whatever your BX game is, your OD&D game is, and just start posting play reports or posting how you as a DM solved issues, that's really interesting for people. I think people really want to see that and see how other folks are handling different things at their own table. And I think that was some sort of the inspiration behind the name. You know, light being a low-level wizard spell and
Yeah.
probably something that people would cast, that kind of set the tone for the blog there.
Yeah, and taking from your own experience
Yeah,
in play of
exactly.
a interesting session
Right.
that you wanted to
And
talk about.
illuminating my table, I guess, is the. I think it was supposed to be a trick blog too, because in the beginning I was gonna like microblog things and only do. Was only going to do posts that were as long as the original light spell itself, which I think 150 words or
Oh,
something.
wow.
But then I quickly found out that I had a lot to say, so that didn't last very long.
Yeah, that seems complex. Um, that's fun though. I
Yeah, now
have
you're thinking
definitely,
about how you would do that.
yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to think. I've definitely had that thought that you're talking about, which is this really worth like putting up on the internet? Are people going to
Absolutely.
care?
Absolutely, they will. I think that that's a question no one should ever wrestle with for too long, because the answer is yes, particularly in this era of AI and digitization and, you know, the dead internet theory. I think other people watching humans do weird little stuff and be really into their hobbies is, you know, I mean, it's I think it's really heartwarming to people. Now when I tell people I play D&D, you know, even the other adults are like insanely interested, and you know that you have this very nerdy thing that you do and they know that it involves a lot, so they're fascinated, you know, by, you know, just by the act of it, you know, that there's people that get together at your house and do this thing, you know.
They know what it is. They want to learn more. They've seen Stranger Things. They're on
Yeah,
board.
exactly. Yeah,
They're
exactly.
primed.
Exactly. But I think they really, some people really, they really want to see, or they love the idea of like an engrossing hobby like that too, I think. So I think that's the other thing that really attracts people, that, you know, I tell them not only just about aspects of, say, doing this, you know, meeting other creators or meeting other people that play the game, but also traveling to conventions. You know, I've talked to some of my friends, and coworkers and tell them, "Oh yeah, where are you going? You're taking off time off." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to this convention with my old high school friends, and we're going to just play games with strangers all weekend." And they're like, "What? Like, what do you do?" And I'm trying to explain it to them, and it's just so, bizarre. Like they never would have considered doing something like that, and I think that becomes very intriguing.
What conventions are you going to?
So, where I'm located, I'm really near uh, North Texas Con, which I think a lot of folks have heard about, or maybe not. It's so North Texas Con is a convention that really features a lot of old school games. I think if I understand its origins, it was started by a lot of folks who were at TSR or friends of TSR, and it has people like Matt Finch in it. I think we had a lot of Shadow Dark's creators and folks arrive there a couple of years ago. I think they started showing up as well. Kelsey, and you're also getting more bloggers from the old school scene to come into it. But it's really cool because it really does focus on a lot of old school games and a lot of the folks that are still around that make up the origins of that scene. And you're going to see things played, everything from like BattleTech to, of course, D&D to D&D in all its flavors, to Call of Cthulhu. There's bunnies and burrows that are being played there. They have a magic cube, and then they do like a crazy midnight auction, which is where I learned Zeb Cook, I think, worked on the Honeymooners board game at one point or something like
Wow,
that. Yeah,
deep cut.
yeah, yeah. Dwarven Forge goes there, so it's really interesting. I mean, it's just really neat. And another one that I think is that I've grown to really enjoy is at Reaper Miniatures. I don't know if you paint miniatures or collect them, but Reaper is a fairly big company here in the U.S.
I have a lot of
I think
boxes from Kickstarter,
of
from
the
stuff I
the
haven't painted.
bones. Yeah. Well, they had so much success, I think, at like local conventions, setting up their little painting area, that they decided just to start throwing their own convention. So it's pretty interesting because it's a smaller convention. It takes place all in like one hotel lobby. They run painting classes all day that you can sign up for. They have a huge painting competition there for all skill levels across all different area like types and areas and like different scenes, like individual models, big busts, on down to like real scenic. There's even a gummy bear painting contest that occurs at some point where you got to paint a little gummy bear.
How do you paint gummy bears? That sounds
Yeah,
really
you paint
tough.
gummy bears. Yeah. uh, and then they even have their mascot, Sophie the succubus. They have a Sophie Says painting competition where you try to paint a miniature, but they put like giant Mickey Mouse gloves on your hands, or they make you
Oh my
wear like
gosh,
paint your friend's
sounds like a
miniatures or
riot.
do things like that. Oh yeah, yeah. So those are the two ones that I try to hit up, and I'm trying to get out to Game Hole Con a little bit more, and I'll be going to not Gary Hole Con, Gary Con next year.
Right on. I did not know what a good con could be. And then I went to Gary Con,
Mm,
um, I think 3 or 4 years ago now,
mhm.
and it was amazing. It was a lot of the things that you were describing, a lot of the same folk, and just like so in line with the very niche hobby that we're a part of. I was just shocked. I'm like, I know this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and we all get to play together. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's really cool is, I mean, we have our own, I guess celebrities within the hobby. So you get to see those folks, but also I think just connecting to just other players that are around the country and, just meeting a lot of different people that all sit down and kind of know the same game that you're playing. So it could be a great experience for playing a lot of different games if that's kind of what you like, or just really drilling deep into maybe a singular game like D&D. If you're used to some of the later editions and you've never played OD&D, like cons are a great place to do that because they're oftentimes, yeah, like run by people who know it, who love it, and then
Super passionate about it.
they'll
You
really,
want to play Swords and Wizardry? Play with Matt
yeah.
Finch. Why not?
watched him DM 20 people at once in his pajamas. So, um, yeah, I mean, and that's really amazing, just to see all that.
That's great. Well, I'm going to GaryCon this year in March, so let's get together.
Absolutely, yeah, it'll be great to see in person, and you can see how tall or short I am.
Ooh, I guess I could guess. Wait a minute. This is a game that they play in the Prismatic Wasteland Discord, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know how tall or short. I haven't found that one yet. That's
Oh, okay. Well, can
I'll
I
have to look.
guess right now then?
Go for it.
Okay, 6'1".
Nope, I wish.
Ah,
Far shorter.
okay. 5'8".
Oh, you're close. You're close. A little bit taller than that.
All right. Well, I'll leave it as a surprise then. This is
Yeah,
premium
exactly.
content, by the way. This is what people
Right.
really are tuning in to listen to.
Exactly. Yeah, well, the answer will be on the Patreon.
Um, so I cast light. The blog's been around since 2018. Uh, you're highlighting your table play, your
Mhm.
experiences. What are you most proud of from the blog?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think one post that's really gotten a lot of play is the Grendel Mendel post that I did, which looked at how can you design quickly diverse mobs, for lack of a better word, of enemies. So, say in your dungeon, you have a lot of normal man types, as they say in OD&D, so a lot of 1 or 2 HD creatures, like goblins or orcs are very common, skeletons. Um, and, that's some of the bread and butter of a dungeon, or it can represent a faction that's composed of more normal sized creatures. But how do you create variety in them, particularly if the characters are going to frequently encounter them? Like you have cultists in your dungeon. Well, they're going to run into them a lot, and you'd be like, these guys again. Now there are 30 of them, and they do 1d6 damage each. So I kind of came up with a quick way in my head to sort of create some very simple ways to move that 1d6 damage around. And it was basically to create a sort of grid of damage and special versus melee and range. And so that creates a quadrant, and then you now have 4 types, which is like melee damage, melee special, range damage, range special. And using this box, you can kind of fill in basically ways to vary this group of enemies. That the key here though is to make all that thematic. So for instance, this found its way into knock, which I was pleased about, and I used skeletons for instance. Yeah, so like uh, ranged damage for the skeletons was like I called them like cranium checkers. So they take off their head and just throw it for 1d6 damage.
That's
Yeah.
great.
I mean, and that's just fun, right? It's easy for the team to run. Melee damage skeletons are your typical skeletons. And then for like melee special, I had like calcium cavaliers, which were just like giant horse-headed skeletons, and you just give them like full HP and they charge for like 2d6 damage. So again, nothing super special. 8 HP is certainly difficult enough for a like low level party. And then for something like ranged special, you can imagine that being like a kind of a caster enemy, something low HP, but is doing some environmental effects. So I had like dead drummers, so they would beat on a drum and cause skeletons to come back every 2 rounds or something like that. So it's like an example of how you can quickly make something unique and something that kind of can surprise your players.
That's very cool. And I could definitely see some easy ways you could incorporate those different type of enemies into a puzzle type situation. Like the tactics change when you know that the drummers are going to be bringing back their buddies every so often. You have to prioritize and move forward. Oh wait, isn't there the corpse of a dragon in this room?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I didn't even think of that. Like when you take one of these and just put them in a room or move them around, yeah, what does that mean for what else the players have killed? Or, just like you said with the ogre at the beginning of the show here, you could be like, hey, remember that ogre that y'all killed but didn't drag out of the dungeon? Well, now its 5-day-old body is going to start coming back. So, yeah, exactly.
I dig it, and I like the variations. Uh, it just yeah, I feel like it really does add a lot to the game when you can just put like a little bit of extra flavor or twist on those things. I I have a really great group that I've been playing with for a couple years now, and I was running them through White Plume Mountain, and I was describing what they had seen and stuff, and I realized that they had never encountered a green slime before, and they didn't know what it was, they didn't know what it did, and they were terrified of it. And I was like, wow, this is what it's like. This is the feeling. And sure, you can make your own monsters with the own ticks and stuff, but it really I don't know, it really lit up the adventure. It really says something when you have something you throw down at the players that it's so weird that they don't know what it is, and it's frightening.
Yeah, and that's I think one of my biggest kicks out of D&D is really taking some of the standards or what's in the book, particularly when you're looking at OD&D or I like to play BX, OSE, of course, the BX flavor. And really taking those monsters and remixing them or reskinning them. I really think that's such a valuable skill for DMs to have because the math is already kind of done for you. And by just changing the way something looks, or again, just moving that D6 damage around to different modalities can really change up something. And you're exactly right. Create that moment of like, what the hell is this? And that's I think really where the juice of D&D is, and when players start really feeling like their characters traveling through a lethal unknown.
Well, now I'm gonna have to check out the blog post, and
Yeah.
I think I have all of the knocks too. So, do you remember
Oh
which one
yeah.
it's in?
It's in the let's see, we're on number 5, so I think it's in knock 4. It's in knock 4 or 5, I
Cool.
think. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I will check it out.
Yeah.
Warren, we're just about ready to get into it with Puzzle Dungeon Jam. Uh,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you want to talk about before we shift gears with iCast Light?
No, no. I mean, that's just, it's like I said, I wrote a post on there about why you should blog, and I think I'll just take the moment to just encourage your audience to and your listeners to blog. I mean, if you don't have one, start it. I have a friend that runs like a long time COC campaign, Call of Cthulhu, and I've been trying to get him to blog for years now. So everyone should do it. I think it's everyone has original thoughts or original ways that they've approached a problem, even if you're running the same sort of dungeons that everyone else has. And let's be creative together. I mean, let's get back to the hobby and let's get out there and show people what we're doing. You never know. Absolutely connect.
Heck yeah. You heard it here today, folks, from Warren D. Get out
Yeah,
there and blog. People want to read it.
exactly. People want slow media. They want slow media that was created by humans.
Let's get the web rings out.
Yeah.
All right. Warren, you have graciously agreed to join me here today to look at a Puzzle Dungeon Jam submission. We're talking about puzzle dungeons similar in scope to those in the Legend of Zelda series.
hmm
You make this dungeon, I'll read your dungeon, give you editorial feedback. These aren't reviews, they're just suggestions you'd get from a peer, a fellow creator, and you can feel free to ignore them or make changes to your adventure. The jam's almost over. Probably by the time this runs, it will be over, but I want to encourage you, just as Warren did. You can do this. You can make this dungeon. There's resources on the page. It's not going away. If you want to go here, it's www.puzzledungeon.com/jam. On my blog, I talk about puzzle dungeon theory and OSR style puzzles a lot also too. So the resources will still be there. And if you want feedback on it, just send it to me. I will give you feedback on it. No problem. So don't use the deadline as, don't dread it. It's fine. It ends on the 15th. It's probably over, but just do it. Send it to me. It'll be fine. I'll take a look. This is one of those feedback sessions now, and Warren has graciously agreed to help me with it. We're going to give overall impressions and overarching feedback. We'll get into the nitty-gritty details after that and suggested changes, and then we'll finish it off with our final thoughts. You ready to get into it, Warren?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me switch the view real quick. Today we're looking at Forgotten Shrine 01 by David Garrett. Let me make sure I got the name right real quick. Yes, David Garrett. Forgotten Shrine 01. This is a puzzle dungeon for levels 1 through 3. And I was looking for the art. I don't think that there's any other art in here besides the map, which is also by David. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's it. It was a nice map, but I think there's good placeholder elements in there.
Yeah.
But I think that's being, and my cat clearly has some opinions on puzzle dungeons
Oh,
that
what
she
does your
might
cat
like
think
to
about him?
might just share off camera. I think my cat thinks that there are not enough treats in puzzle dungeons, so
We should rectify that. There are treats in this puzzle dungeon.
there are.
It is a mushroom-themed puzzle dungeon. We got gimmicks involving the mushrooms. So you
Mushrooms.
eat certain mushrooms. They interact with light in a certain way.
Hmm.
I would say that the intended play for this dungeon heavily relies on NPC interactions and faction play. Would you agree with that, Warren?
Yeah. I think, as stated at the beginning of the dungeon, they want to set up a puzzle around a sort of a social puzzle. You got three groups in here. Three, I think, nice, good starting choices. You got goblins, you got spiders, and we got maybe fungal priests, who are also spirits at this point. So. That's some good ingredients to start with for the social problem.
Yep, you're right. So it's a good mix of stuff.
Mhm. I I think starting out, so I really enjoy the choices of the factions. I think in starting out, maybe two things should be I would encourage the author to define more. One is maybe the problem, like why are the PCs there? There's a promise of a wish, which is super cool. I'm a big proponent of trying to bring more fantastic elements down into lower levels of the game. I participated in the appendix in Jam and tried to stick a deck of many things in my entry in a first level dungeon,
Dig
just
it.
because it's a way to mix it up. And I think a wish, which is potentially promised as an excellent lure. I think the dungeon doesn't quite set up why would players maybe know about this, or what is something, this is supposed to be kind of a remote shrine according to the setup. So what problem is being created by this abandoned shrine or forgotten shrine being disturbed now? And I don't think that comes quite across in this draft. I
I
thought
agree.
maybe, oh, please go ahead.
I have a note here about hooks too. I
Hmm.
think the hook about the players knowing about the wish and different things that they could get in here is
Hmm.
great. I think they should know a lot of hooks. That should be one of them. But We skipped a little bit of the background here. I forgot. This used to be a shrine that many people would come to because it's a fantasy world. The setup here says the dead return to life. And it used to be people make this journey to this shrine, which is tended by these myconoids, these mushroom folk. And they would say, welcome, come on in. Yes, of course we'll accept your fleshy dead body here. And we'll make sure that it doesn't, return from the dead. And that should totally be a blatant hook. I think that's an obvious one. You have a rich patron. Please, my father, I don't want him to come back. Please take him to this abandoned shrine and do the rites for him.
Yeah, that I didn't even think of that, but even just yeah, that's a great hook for the history to say like, why would somebody, yeah, like my father wanted this done or my mother wanted this done, and I'm trying to, it's like a simple human reason, like I want to honor this and honor them. So here's the body. I don't have the time to go do it. You go do it, and I'll pay you handsomely for that.
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe some of the dead could be returning and showing up in villages, and now everybody's getting re-scared that, like, wait a minute, like, what's going on? And, the dead might have fungus on them, so they think there's, well, what, they want to send somebody to go up there and see what's happened.
Yeah, definitely like that.
Yeah.
When we do eventually, spoilers, see zombies on there, I totally expected them to be a variant that shot spores. I was surprised when there wasn't. And a little disappointed actually.
Yeah, I think, when we, uh, I don't know if you want to do it now, maybe we could talk a little bit more about the factions, or if you want to move through some of the
Yeah,
structure of the
I
dungeon.
know I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Let me back up a minute and uh, go with my overall feedback. I think this is a really fun setup. I think it's a good background. I think it could use some hooks. I think it needs a wandering encounter table to provide tension and also some reason uh, to be careful with your time as a resource, because there's a lot of fun factions here, but as written, they're all just staying in their one location. There's no reason for
I,
them to move around.
I agree. Um, yeah, I agree with that. I agree that maybe going back to the Walking Dead hook, maybe this shrine could be really stuffed with either the older dead or maybe somebody else has been using it or something's happened. So you're right. Maybe you have a lot of hostile dead now, or you have something going on, but you need that pressure on the PCs because you're right. It seems like as written, a lot of the factions are keeping to themselves. They seem preoccupied um, by their own goals, and I don't think there's, again, as we see in this draft, I don't think there's quite enough tension actually between the three factions that we have right now, and maybe we can get into where that could be ratcheted up a little bit.
Yeah, great point. Uh, Digging in again for the factions too, I
Hmm.
like how there's a short write up for each of the factions. It's a couple sentences, and then it goes into the members of the factions and what they want. Um, I want a little bit more about what they think about outsiders. There's situations in the key where PCs encounter all of a faction or just like one person of a faction, and I kept thinking, I'm not sure how I would run this. I would probably roll reaction dice because it doesn't explicitly say what they're going to do, how they're going to react to these adventurers coming in for a specific purpose, maybe taking the corpse in. I imagine the goblins would probably be annoyed to hostile, but I'm not sure. Maybe one of them would be cool with it because they want to restore the shrine to its former glory. So they might think treasure hunters was a bad thing, but bringing a corpse was a good thing. These are some things that I think if there was just one sentence more about would help a lot.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on exactly the first thing that kind of struck me is while I like the choice of the factions, I think that they need, to your point, stronger motivation, but I also think the factions themselves need to be a little bit weirder. And I really thought a lot about how when in D&D you have kind of a choice. You can, I think, well, you got three choices. They're kind of on a continuum, and let's use the Ettercaps for example. Um, the problem with D&D and D and all its sort of humanoid creatures is that it sort of muddles them. It takes something really cool and then makes that cool element very superficial, because it'll be this sort of creature like an ettercap, but it will act very human. Um, and that sort of then makes me always ask, particularly when I'm writing my own dungeons, why don't I just make this thing human anyways? Because then it, like, the players know how to interact with it. I mean, players are human. It kind of goes back to a problem even Guy Gax had always talked about, but I do think it's somewhat relevant that you can just make the NPC a human and just have them be part of a faction or an ideology. And because your players are human, they know how to interact with humans, and as a DM, you know how to quickly think of things that's a human in scope. But you could really make things weird, and I think this gets back to our barbarian discussion, when you either take a human and make them do something animalistic, like eating people, or you take what I call a spider with a top hat, and you take an animal and give them a really human trait. And in fairy tales, we see a lot of this. We see Puss in Boots. Alice in Wonderland is, full of this. Like the White Rabbit has a pocket watch. It's obsessed with, you know, making an appointment. And this, I think, this really creates an element of surprise, of mystery. It always feels very dangerous because you don't know if a spider's wearing a top hat. Well, is it going to be very courteous, like people who wear top hats are? Or is it going to be like a spider, which will maybe eat me? And I think that when you push things to those extremes, if you're not going to go with just a human faction, that gives you that tension that you want, and also allows you to create a want and a need in that faction. It is oftentimes is difficult for the players to immediately answer. So, oh yeah, please.
So that's interesting. I like that idea that you're saying. So either an animal with a human characteristic, traditional animal with a human characteristic, right, or
Seriously.
a humanoid with an animal characteristic. Were you thinking of keeping like the humanoid factions that they have here, like the goblins and the Ettercap, and giving them more animalistic qualities?
Yeah, so for instance, or just really emphasizing, like kind of as they're written, again, it's you have things that otherwise could easily be represented by humans because they have very normal human desires. So for instance, goblins, like one of the write-ups I like is one of the goblins wants to be a proper businessman. Um, okay, and that's great, except if you just stop it there, it's like, well, how is that any different than a bandit, than like Richard Shelby, of Peaky Blinders? Like, he's a gangster that wants to be a proper businessman. So, how do we make this goblin, like, how do we make maybe these demands more difficult for the players to answer to? And maybe it's that he wants to be a proper businessman of teeth, toes, and noses.
Oh, yes.
And then when he encounters people with noses, he's really interested in taking your nose, either because he's going to start his business with it or he's willing to trade you. It's like your friend's got a great nose. I'll take your friend's nose and I'll give you information. And that also enhances this maybe puzzle aspect of the dungeon. So how do you how do you help someone who wants to be a businessman but they don't want to deal in typically human things?
That
Um,
definitely enhances the social game right there, the social mini game.
Right. Like he wants toes and teeth, and you're a party of people with a lot of toes and a lot of teeth.
Maybe you could spare one, just one, maybe a pinky
Sure,
toe.
sure. A whole mouth. You got a lot of hirelings, right? Just leave
Yeah.
one.
And this really brings into question like what kind of economy is grabbing these noses and toes and teeth.
Exactly. Um, for the spiders, the when you look at the ettercaps, they're sort of tending to their um, children like caring humans would, and I think this creates, again, I don't think there's a tension there. So, for instance, it would be weirder if the um, the ettercaps, for instance, were humans that treated 100 babies like spiders do, which is to basically abandon them or even eat them or leave them up. I mean, that would just be weird. I mean, what would the players do for that? Or you, again, you steer it the other way, and you have a spider that maybe treats each of its young like an individual human would. So there's an intense caring for that. So again, I think you try to push something to the extreme um, in order to create something that's not so easily answered by the players. The
These could these ettercaps could easily be replaced with spiders, I think. Were you thinking about them treating each of like their hundreds of babies like individually, like it's like
Yeah,
exhausting for
so
them?
so not a one can die, like
Yeah.
not a one, or they go nuts
Oh
and
man.
like try to get rid of everybody. Um, or just have, instead of again making them eder caps, why not just big talking spiders? Again, how do you deal, like I love spiders. I put them in all my dungeons. I was writing, one of the dungeons I wrote for the dungeon design document was these trapdoor spiders, and they just carry around big dungeon doors and hide behind them in rooms. They dig a little hole and then like hide behind them. But they are semi-intelligent. You can talk to them, but they love knock knock jokes. So so again, you have something that is predatory and huge,
Yeah,
but it likes bad jokes. Like that's a again, it's can be kind of a disturbing thing
that's
for
great.
players, but a very interactable thing.
And
So maybe we could
honestly,
do something.
you like the phrase "if walls could talk." It's that is it. You're
Yeah,
talking to a wall here.
exactly. Um, so yeah, so maybe there's something, or maybe all the baby spiders think everyone else is their parents, so they like glom onto them, and create some sort of like, they slow the players down, but you can't crush one of them because the parental spiders will go nuts. So I just think we need like a sort of tension there. That, and then I guess kind of wrap it off. I really like the idea of these fungal priests, but again, when I think fungus, I think more collective. So again, I wondered how can we make these strangers? Because right now again, the fungus priest perhaps could be just replaced by regular priests who have an undead spirit. So again, I would encourage the author to really ramp up the weird aspect of this. I mean, maybe it's just one fungal mat that's like animating all the dead or some of the dead, or what would a fungus spirit, really want out of people. The author wrote about how it sees life and death on a continuum. So it's not really going to have the same concerns as humans. So how can you use that as a puzzle and a block in this dungeon?
So like a Fey version of morality, but in this case, it's the mushroom. We are all connected. So what does the individual really mean?
Exactly. How would they value life in the same way? And clearly, the author wrote up this interesting thing that at least people around in the valley or wherever this sort of location takes place have sort of bought into this at one point. So, how does that affect what the players know, or how can we use this? What does this mean, and how does that affect those sort of typical wants and needs um, of these spirits?
I like the direction that you've taken with the factions, the suggestions that you had. My one of the suggestions that I was thinking of in the beginning here for running the adventure, it talks about how the Ettercaps might react to the presence of the PCs and how the goblins might react. You know, they investigate, the goblins investigate, and the Ettercaps move to defensive positions and use the element of surprise. But those are the only lines that we really get here. So I thought like an order of battle. So, you know, they move to this area, they get in defensive position, or the and you know, they have like traps with hidden web balls that they might
Hmm.
deploy. And maybe the goblins move to investigate and stay behind, but send their big brother Jeff, the orc, in first to ask questions later. I think it could benefit from that. And I think something that I felt, at least from the map key entry with all of the faction of the goblins together, I felt there wasn't a strong enough reason for the players not to do that themselves, which is fight first and ask questions later. There's a bunch of goblins and an orc. It's not a super hard battle, I think, for a level of one through three. They might be thinking we're just going to take our chances and move, just plow through the dungeon. There needs to be a compelling reason for them not to do that, I think.
That's the same sort of thing I started to arrive at when I was reading through. I think the dungeon would be a fun dungeon to play, but in terms of the theme of the jam, a puzzle dungeon, I think there still needs to be a stronger emphasis on exactly what the puzzle is, because I agree, you could almost, with enough hirelings, kill everything in the dungeon, and then just, I mean, maybe save for the last thing, or you could easily make it very combat heavy, and I think that's not generally the idea behind a puzzle dungeon. Looking at like aberrant reflections, for instance, you can see the setup as, for instance, using the mirrors to move around the dungeon. I was trying to think of another dungeon that maybe had one puzzle as its central feature. But the thing that hit me the first was the story of the giant who didn't have a heart, because I'm reading East of the Sun, West of the Moon.
Is this
And
a novel?
yeah, it's a collection of like old folk tales from
Oh,
Eastern Europe. This is super good. It has these great illustrations too. The the premise of this, it's almost like a puzzle dungeon, is this the youngest prince of a family goes off because all his brothers are missing. He ends up at a giant's mansion where he sees, of course, the woman that might become his princess. But she's like, no, I'm trapped by this giant. He's like, cool, I'll just hide in this bedroom and then kill the giant when he comes in. And she's like, well, you won't be able to kill him because he doesn't have a heart. And so now it becomes a puzzle on, well, where's his heart? And then how do I get it? And then, um, is this gonna solve everything?
this is great. Do you have to get the
And
giant to fall in love? Is that how you get him a heart?
I don't know, I gotta finish it. But what the
Ah,
giant can do is he's turned all the other princes to stone with a glance. So our hero can't fight this thing
yeah.
directly. That's
You
what I
can't
was
mess
getting
around
to.
and
So
find out.
yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. In the dungeon as presented now, there needs to be more pressure as to why you can't just go in, herding pigs on fire and getting enough local woodsmen to sign on to your escapade.
Right on. These are some great suggestions. Thank you. Uh, just looking through my notes real quick. Each of these, I highlighted some of the motives that I thought were neat. I like the line here about the dog that the goblins have. Bruno takes many naps.
I like the yeah, I like the I like the entrance to the dungeon. I think the dog had actually moved into room one under the sign that says no spiders, because I think then you would have a lot of fun elements to kick the dungeon off. You got, are you going north? Are you going south? Can you figure out what's going on with the idol? And the dog is like, you got to do all this very quietly, which I think adds
Yes.
a great element.
I think the dog is a fun element for the players to latch onto as well.
Mhm.
And I think that it might be a good kickoff for like a powder keg moment too. If you have the faction play, it's nice to be able to have some kind of a clock or some kind of a tension that will explode or unravel on its own without the PCs interacting. But once the PCs do interact, they'll push one thing over the edge or another. And I think a John Wick situation with the dog that PCs might enter into might piss off the wrong people.
Yeah, and I mean, and since we're using the dog and we're in a fantasy environment, why not give it two or three heads and make them all different personalities? You know, let's
Ooh,
go for
fun.
a like a King Ghidorah or of course a Cerberus situation where we
Yeah.
have like maybe a really friendly one and the other two are more serious about their job but sleepy. Uh, and let's really amp it up, like you said, put a timer. Like one head wakes up that's very friendly and is like watching them, maybe wants to be really helpful, but then you're looking at the other two that start waking up very growly. And you're right, then the third wakes up and boom, everything breaks loose.
I dig it. Just the the social ball that rolls from that interaction. I feel like I can watch the table as it's happening as you're describing it. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I had some other notes for just little things that I sort of saw within there. But if there's another kind of big overview that we talked about the factions, we talked about maybe centralizing a puzzle to it a little more
Yeah.
clearly, trying to ensure that combat's not an answer. But
I
is there
think I'm ready
another?
to dig into the nitty gritty of the key. Um,
Okay.
One of my notes in the entrance, actually, I did see throughout the dungeon, so it could be considered overarching. So maybe this is the last thing. How mushrooms interact with light and how the different gimmicks of the dungeon work. It seems like the only way to learn that is through NPC interaction. NPCs will willingly give up some information, some other stuff. Maybe you have to press them, but it wasn't really clear if that was the case. I'd love to see some more guidelines on players learning that and maybe some ways for them to learn it without the NPC interaction. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that again, going to the theme of this of a puzzle dungeon, that maybe there needs to be more locks, so to speak, meaning general obstacles that can only be either undone by NPCs, which is why you have to be friendly with them. Like you need someone who speaks Goblin, or you need, maybe there's a fungal mat that won't open up except for the priest, or somebody maybe having the
Yes.
cut off hand of the priest. You don't even need the actual priest, you just need a piece. Or maybe for the spiders, like you got to get across some of their webs, but they can carry you on their back. You can have like a frog and scorpion situation where it's like, how much do you trust a giant spider or an ettercap to carry you to safety when they keep mentioning that they're hungry and they got a lot of babies to feed? Um, but yeah, I also thought that some of the fungus elements were a little discongruous because you talk about sometimes like the fungus will grow when you have light around, except that I always think about darkness and moisture. It makes fungus grow, but plants grow in the presence of light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess my one suggestion would be maybe for the author to make some of these elements more, in line with what we assume about fungus. Or you could switch the fungus faction for like a plant faction, like a rose faction, or some other plant that's associated with graves, like a lily faction, or yellow musk creepers are one of my favorites, a classic plant in D&D that turns people into sort of plant zombies. But if you wanted to keep the elements as they are and do a lot of interaction with light, I think you could just use like a plant, and that would clue people into maybe what the connections are in the elements.
I agree with you
Yeah.
about tying into the mushrooms and the light there. One thing I noticed, which really threw me off actually, is toward the end of the dungeon. On certain mushrooms, light actually makes them recede instead of grow, which is for the rest of the dungeon.
Yeah,
And
I think go
yeah,
ahead,
in
please.
puzzle dungeons, I think repetition is key in building up that understanding of the mechanics of the dungeon is important. And
Hmm.
yes, it's important to recontextualize that in a different way, but it should build on the existing mechanics and change them in such a way so that you realize that you had an incomplete understanding before, and because of this new information now you have a more complete understanding instead of just this is a different type of mushroom and it behaves differently.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I saw that too and thought that same thing. I was like, wait a minute, this now does the exact opposite, but not in a way that it's not like in video games where you encounter like fire, 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 then ice. So you're like, oh, I should do the reverse of this. Or you encounter an element that has a polar opposite. So you kind of intuit that you need to do this in reverse, or there's something about its orientation that it clues you into that. I agree. I think, um, particularly for RPG puzzles where of pen and paper variety, where we're having to verbalize a lot of the elements, they need to be. I agree with you. You need to do repetition more often. Again, I think your own module was very nice about you were doing the same. You're dealing with the same elements a lot, but then there were the little variations that helped keep things fresh, but without inverting anything so much that what you normally had been doing would not work anymore or would not work without some obvious clues.
Yep. So let's see. I was a little confused on 1A for the rope bridges. I wasn't sure where it led to from the map and where you would fall to. There.
Yeah, it looks from the lines that you just reach the bottom and that's it. It doesn't look like it's connected into area 15, I think is where the line passes in front of, but
Maybe it's supposed to be more of a rope ladder, which goes to 15.
yeah, or I was thinking like a lot of different like stalagmites or stalagmites or however, yeah, like looping down. But I agree with you. I think it seems like an element where there was an idea about something else, and then maybe it was sort of abandoned, or maybe I mean, this is a kind of an early draft. Maybe there's something else going on with it. But I agree with you with three traps in it. They're pretty deadly. They do 1d4 damage each, and you could fall. At the end, you only get like 30 pieces of gold, which I felt like you should maybe get some, again, maybe either a clue to the dungeon, to the puzzle. I think that would be good to put down there. Or I really like the funguses that act like potions, so maybe you should get some extra extra potions that'd be fine. Or at least maybe a back door into like level 3 down there, since you've already made it all the way down there.
Yeah, a little something extra I think would work. I know
Yeah.
this is written for Shadow Dark, and I know that XP and treasure work slightly differently, so I wasn't completely sure that I just wasn't misunderstanding 20 gold pieces.
Yeah, even if that's more, I still think that's a lot of effort to get just, even if it was, I mean, even by normal D&D standards, if it was like 500 gold pieces, I think the players should be like, well, now we got to climb all the way back out and it's, yeah. Now if there's like a +1 sword down there, they might feel much differently, but again, I think we want to think to stick back to the jam, it actually should be an element that ties back into the greater um, puzzle of the dungeon itself. You know, we if we keep putting options that are combat oriented, then that's where their minds are going to go.
I do like that idea. It would be it would be interesting if this was like a kind of um, a myconoid bridge maybe that kind of reacted to the light, and so visitors of the shrine might know that for this particular area they would have to quench their light, and maybe they had a guide to cross the bridge before, but maybe the adventurers don't know that, and the bridge recedes like in the light, and now adventurers are going blind in the dark across the bridge. Might be some things in the distance wandering counter table.
No, I think that yeah, I think that's all a great yeah. That would add to the sort of religious like journey of the dead. Maybe there was a ceremony kind of oriented around it, and um, you know that would be uh, yeah. I think that would be really cool to tie in, get a little history in there too, and add something like that as a as an interactable piece. But I think again, for that element, it needs to connect some. We need to know if it needs to connect somewhere else in the dungeon.
Small thing. I think this could probably be entry 2. I don't think it needs to be 1A for the rope bridge. It's its own key. Small typo in this one as well. Uh, any more than a single human's weight instead of white.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a few places where mechanics of a certain trap or mushroom are repeated 2 or 3 times. You just put
Hmm.
that one place like in items and then reference it. So these are silver strands. I think they even do that with a different element, the hexagonal holes. They
Hmm.
say in the level description, they say these are hexagonal holes and they work like this, and then they only ever reference them as hexagonal holes. You can do that with the silver strands and the other
And
thing, which I think,
the goblin goblin tripwires.
there you go, goblin tripwire.
Yeah, I think too the speaking of these trap elements, again, I think for a low level party, like having both the spider strands do damage and slow down the party is fairly punishing. I mean, 1d4 damage, your characters are going to hit these things a couple of times and then they're going to die. So I think simply just um, you know, having the strands restrain them is enough. You know, I think for when you're designing dungeons for lower level characters, generally one thing the trap does is good enough. I like the stinky goblin tripwires because I like the use of stinky. So I think
Yeah,
um,
that's pretty fun.
I think stinky is actually you should. I think it's better to hone in that um, the tripwires spray the characters with something that makes them stinky, and then the goblins and the spiders always know where they are. You know, so it's not even a damage thing. It's just that they now you can never hide from them. Like they always know. You know
You're
where you
marked.
are, and what you're doing, and you're marked. Yeah, but the mushrooms, myconoids don't. You know, they don't care. They sense on a different way, but I think just simply marking people is like good enough for what you want. And the dog would know where you were at all times either.
That's
Could
right.
track you, right? They could track you with the dog. Um, and same thing. I mean, maybe the sticky ropes. Maybe they can bind you, and then maybe you know spiders string webs out everywhere, and they can
Mm-hmm.
feel the vibration, so they always know where you're there. Maybe babies hide up in there, so they start. Maybe they just fall on you, and you know it takes so many turns.
I like it.
It's
Uh, just noticing something again, and coming back to something that you had said about um, more locks in the dungeon, more things to trip up the players, and so that they could use their keys. There's a lot of fun keys and a lot of fun OSR style tools that you can get. Eating the various mushrooms gives you some fun stuff. There's one that makes you gaseous form. I
Love
wanted
gaseous form.
more things to kind of trip them up and block them. I know that there's at least one spot where it says that only like spiders can kind of go through. So that's an obvious spot. And this one over here in key 2 is washing your hands in the fountain and doing that ritual gets you protection from evil. But I think the only place where that really matters is level 3, right? With the zombies in one area.
Yeah, that goes back to I think the sort of discongruousness of some of the elements. Like, okay, so what's evil to a myconoid? You know, would it be anybody with individuality? Like to me, if I was a myconoid god, I would assume that collectivism is good, individualism is bad. So, you know, so how do we reinterpret some of these classic D&D elements to kind of fit better with our dungeon, and how do we make this a puzzle situation, I wonder. You know, I think that would really enhance the theme of the dungeon, and again present a new element to puzzle over, you know, and figure out how do we make this work in our favor. Because I don't really get the sense that the goblins, ettercaps, or the myconoids are particularly evil in the way that I would interpret classically. You know, they're just like when they're, I mean, one person really likes poetry. Like, you know,
Yeah.
how can they be evil?
The same. They don't seem to really have that thirst for violence that I
Yeah,
imagine like an evil creature would.
yeah,
Even like some of them are just like, they want to eat the goblins, right? The ettercaps want to eat the goblins, but they're like begrudgingly like, okay, whatever. They give us food. It's fine. I guess I won't do that.
yeah. And I think again, that's where, you know, I think there's a risk of writing tension out of your own factions. You know, have them be hungry. Have them like the only reason that they can't get the goblins is traps or something that the goblins have done to protect themselves,
They
or
don't like
maybe
eating the mushrooms.
yeah, they don't like eating the mushrooms. Yeah, that was also weird too. Spiders eating mushrooms. I don't. I mean, I just. I don't
It's
think
not what
there's
I
any.
would, think of. Yeah. I would think of
Yeah,
insects.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like maybe if they were all grasshoppers, I would agree with that. But I don't think there's any insect that even like it. I wrote a note that the eating of the mushrooms makes me feel like the spiders or could have also been exchanged for like ants or an ant-like leaf cutter thing that's going in there, and maybe because they're eating the mushrooms, they're becoming because some of the mushrooms give you like ESP. Maybe they're like kind of gaining consciousness, so now they're troubled by their own consciousness, or they can all talk now. And you know, again, that would be a weird element that would, uh,
Definitely.
you know,
When you were talking about like the collective view and not of the individual with the myconoid, I immediately thought Ender's Game actually with the Formians, the Formics,
yeah.
which is like an ant-like hive mind alien
Hmm.
that spoilers for like 50, 60-year-old book. I'm not sure how old now.
Yeah.
Uh, they didn't realize that they were murdering individuals in their conquest of spreading. They thought they were just pruning fingernails of the galaxy as they moved on. So having kind of like an ant faction with the myconoids might make sense in that way too. Like they are like minds. They respect each other's collectivism. They know that they are individual groups, but they don't treat each other as individuals. So like killing one of the ants is not the same as killing a goblin, but the goblins don't feel that way.
Exactly. I think you're getting to the exact point that how do you, again, yeah, it's, what do they call it? It's like orange blue morality, I think is a short, or like fey morality. Yeah. What do you do when something has an entirely different conception of what is either good or evil, right or wrong, or what's acceptable or not? And that's such a fun thing to confront the players with. And and they kind of expect, and I think maybe a dungeon with two collectivist mindsets and then one individual, then you start feeling aligned with the goblins, who still want to collect your nose though. Like,
Yes. Yes. All right. Key entry number 3. I get the feeling that this mushroom priest spirit is supposed to be here. It says they spend most of their time in quiet contemplation. They inhabit their corpse when they're not roaming around. So some of the time they do roam around. I think they have a hobby. I forget what it is from their description. But as it is now, it doesn't say like there's a chance that they're not here. So maybe just like a 4 in 6 chance that they're here, or a 5 in 6 chance, just so that there's a possibility of encountering them elsewhere. Yeah.
well, and again, I think we come back to like, so they're myconoids, they're spirits, but they kind of have hobbies, which again, like, would it be more interesting if they were only spirits and they kept trying to steal bodies of the adventurers in order to go fight the spiders or the goblins? That to me would be like a puzzle. Like, how do you keep something from possessing you?
Because
Because
they
now it
needed
sees,
a
yeah, they need it,
corporeal form.
yeah, it reminds me of the Ghost in the Shell. It has a mind, it needs a body. Like, um, so it keeps trying to possess the players, and then they run off to fight the goblins or the spiders. But as it's written, again, they're kind of like hanging out, and I don't. It's not clear how this is supposed to be like a sort of puzzle for the players to figure out. If they were incorporeal, the puzzle would be, okay, how do you deal with them, um, not get not get possessed? Maybe that's where the protection from evil water could come in.
Oh yes.
You
Oh, good
know,
point. I didn't think about
but
that with the spirits.
yeah, but maybe it's like full of like mold, so nobody's like, I'm not gonna drink that. Like, but in fact, that would be what would protect you. Yeah, it was kind of unclear. So they're spirits, but they inhabit these bodies. But I don't. I think.
It was a little unclear if they needed that. I didn't know
Yeah,
until I looked at the stats at the very end, and then I I guessed that they can interact as spirits. It says
hmm,
they're incorporeal, but in place of attacks, become corporeal or
yeah,
incorporeal. So I guess they could switch that if they want to. But I think
yeah,
it
and
would be more interesting if they needed a fleshy body of some kind to interact.
yeah, exactly. Maybe one of the hooks is one of them has possessed one, I don't know, child or something, and they've come
Oh
back, and
man,
now it's like, oh yeah,
Grandpa's
no,
talking about mushrooms.
yeah, exactly. But the child says weird things occasionally, and everybody's like, gosh, that sounds like, Susan, Grandma Susan, who died 200 years ago. So uncanny,
Yes, yes.
Um,
How could she know this stuff?
exactly. And then the players feel tricked. So now they might view this faction as hostile when, well, it's not intended to be that way, but they just needed this.
I keep going to the next keys. If you have something you want to say about a particular area, just stop me.
No, no, no. You're hitting definitely on a lot of the things that I picked up on, and um, y y I think for those listening, we are getting into a little bit of into the keys, but I want to acknowledge writing dungeons is really hard. It's not an easy thing to do, to get what's in your head to translate um, into these things. But I think what we're pointing out is, when you do have fresh eyes, as someone who might pick this up and run it, these points can create like just halts in the action, or the DM starts flipping back and forth, or they're just elements that are unclear.
Time that they need to spend thinking, how would this
How does
creature
this?
react?
Yeah.
All right. So number 4, I know we already talked about the active light source. I had a light here or a note here, like do mushrooms react that way to light? We talked about that. A minor
Hmm.
thing I have for the wooden door. The bullet says the wooden door is locked but not trapped. I think you could drop that unless I missed something that all doors were locked. I don't think it's needed. Or
Yeah,
all doors were trapped.
I think right. I think to your point, like, yeah, if something is always going to be this way, then yeah, just make a note on the key that all doors are locked. Make a note at the beginning, DM just some things you should know, and then yeah, you don't have to repeat that over and over. You save some space. It can help with layout and
Yeah.
everything.
I like the stinky spray. Now,
Yeah.
what you're saying about a trap doing one thing, it does 1d6 damage and it blinds for 1d6 rounds. I love the blinding thing. It reminds me of Jurassic Park, like trap out of nowhere, head height for someone who's not a goblin. Ah,
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the like, so it would miss halflings or goblins because Shudder has goblins, but you're right. Like, it would hit anyone taller. And yeah, I think like blinding is enough. Again, I just go back to I think picking the right element makes it a problem enough, makes it punishing enough. But sometimes when you double up, it just feels like, well, now I'm 3 HP down when I only had 4, and I'm blind,
yes.
which, you know,
This is a fun one. I think definitely needs a wandering counter table. There's a trap here that I'm looking at on the same spread for key 7. The puffballs react to light by growing 100 times in volume, choking the passage. If they're damaged, they release spores that inflict sleep, which is a fun thing, a fun challenge, I think. But there's no teeth to sleep because there's no reason not to just sleep it off. There's no wandering encounters.
absolutely. I think, yeah, I love sleep. I know my players love using sleep on humanoids that I have in my dungeons, so I like any chance to inflict sleep on them. But but you're right, without like either spiders that come along or myconoids or a goblin nose businessman who sees spare noses hanging out.
Yes,
You know,
opportunity comes a
opportunity
knocking.
comes a knocking. Yeah, he knows his business. Yeah, it would be funny to wake players up with a sharp pain, and that's because now their nose is missing. And I think you're right. That's a way to make the trap have teeth, no pun intended, but you don't have to like keep doing damage with them for that, or it puts the bite in the element.
In some settings, I think goblins are fey, right? I know
Hmm.
in the Black Worm of Brandonsford, like the
Hmm.
goblins, they're like rust colored and they have different animal heads and things going on. I could
Hmm.
definitely see like a fey goblin sneaking up on you while you're sleeping and stealing your nose, man.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I would want that nose back.
Exactly. I think that's a great, yeah. I mean, players get caught up with all sorts of stuff. Like, I'm not gonna let this goblin steal my nose.
Yes.
It's like some players get obsessed about, I would think.
I mean, I think there's a few ways that you can piss off your players, right? And one of them is to steal something from them. Have an NPC steal something from them. They will be angry.
Hmm.
Another way is to, I think, have them want to, I don't know, but I'm forgetting, but steal something from them, right? Like an item or something, but stealing their nose, I feel like yes, that would make them angry as a fun way to motivate them to explore.
Yeah,
Interesting hook.
and that brings up another good point about how using using the faction to encourage that exploration with stuff like this, tricks like this. And that goes back to how's the DM supposed to run these factions? If you were to combine goblins always still noses or ears with they do hit and run tactics, and then they like why do they want all these noses? Well, they're actually trying to start a business. Then you have you have a really delicious like setup here where the players are running around trying to collect their noses. But then but they might be running into all these puzzles that the goblins can get around because they have access to certain areas, but then the players need to go get the help from something else in order to get into those areas or open them up.
That's true. I just randomly thinking about that with the noses too. That would be fun, giving the players something to learn with the stinky goblin spray. Maybe you can smell it from a certain distance away, but not if you don't have a nose.
There you go. Yeah, you could have more stinky goblin stuff, like weird cheese, things or weird, or even some of the mushrooms. Yeah, like some of the most dangerous mushrooms have a nasty smell to them. But yeah, if a goblin is still in your nose, you can't detect them. Maybe because it's too dark or they're on the ceiling or something like that. Yeah.
All right, so the living quarters, Area 6, this is where the Goblin brothers hang out and their orc brother. And they're just doing their thing. And I've already mentioned that, the players need a reason to not default to combat, I think, here.
Yeah, otherwise, like, why not just take them all out?
Yeah.
What are they holding that players need to get from them, so they need to keep them alive, or what are what does this group help them do? And a little element back on the orc, the orc wants to be um, poet, which again is it's good. It's different than what people normally do. But again, if we make the orc too human, I think it sort of dilutes the potential. So what if they want to be a poet, but you know, they only like to hear the poetry of screams or something, or they only want the poetry of fear, or something that's hard for the players again to like just easily give them, um, or you know, they
Yeah.
like
They want certain emotions, like going
yeah.
back to the faith thing, right?
Mhm.
They're interested in that emotion like joy.
Mhm.
So, do you need them to experience joy or fear, or do you need to experience fear in order to appease the orc? Yes, I dig it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't know if you've ever seen or read Shogun, but one of the opening scenes is that one of the sailors is captured and he's boiled alive because one, he's being punished, but two, one of the main characters is trying to understand when a man something like truly knows death. So he's listening for the pitch of the scream to understand like
Wow,
what that moment is. So
that's a thing.
yeah, it's pretty brutal. But again, it's poetry, but done in a way that's very difficult just to give.
Indeed. Goblin bombs.
I
Uh,
think
I don't know if it's a Shadow Dark item, but if they're not, you should have some stats with them. Even if they are a Shadow Dark item, it's sometimes nice to just have like some parentheses around them. I imagine Goblin Bombs probably just do some blast damage, so
Mhm.
1d4 Goblin Bombs as it's written here, and then in parentheses 1d6 blast. That way you don't have to look it up.
Or maybe again to use some of the environment like weaponized puffballs.
Yeah,
Like maybe they've created a light timer or something like that. I guess if they can harvest, maybe the goblins just know how to harvest them just right.
you just keep them in
Um,
bags, right? As soon as they
Yeah.
come out, they start growing.
Yeah.
Phoop, phoop.
There you go. Yeah.
Let's see. Yes, there's some mushrooms here that allow you to communicate telepathically with any other creature that's consumed them. And I don't know what languages the creatures speak. Do the goblins and the ettercaps speak common? Do the myconoids?
I wondered the same thing. I think again that's where I go back to, and I know there's a lot of discussion in the blog space about, well, how prevalent should common be, or is there something to be had with trying to use different languages that
I
people are
want a
supposed to
stance.
use?
This is a puzzle dungeon. Is this a key that I need?
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think it is. It's a key in need of a lock, and I thought that when in the first room, there's a painted sign that just says um, "spiders keep out," but it's seemingly written in common. When I think if it was written in Goblin, and then you have the dog sitting below it,
Hmm.
players be wondering like, well, are these two things connected?
Oh,
It'd create.
yes.
But if one player was a goblin or had chosen goblin, then that's like a fun way to use something that might have been randomly generated by the players or maybe was chosen that can come into the use. So
That's a good that's a good idea.
I think to answer, maybe more directly answer your question, yeah, these factions should not speak common at all. You should have myconoids you can't communicate with because they're either spirits or they have such a weird way of communicating. The goblins can speak goblin, and then either the better caps could speak spider, or this is why I say just make them big giant spiders. Like, how do you communicate with a spider? Um, and then maybe you need to find these mushrooms in order to communicate with all the factions, or at least maybe one of them can only be communicated with through these mushrooms, these ESP mushrooms. I mean, that's
Yep.
that's the key in the lock that you need.
Yep, definitely. One of them is stuck in the old ways,
Yeah,
doesn't want to learn anything else. Maybe they don't even know common. Maybe they know like or they don't know goblin, right? They know like
yeah,
ancient goblin.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, high goblin, or yeah, high fae, or sometimes I have like I've had factions only speak like arcane, so wizards can kind of sort of speak the language, or um, I like thieves can't. I've used thieves can't before as like the
Oh
only
yeah,
language that people speak
totally.
in. Yeah. Um,
For those of you listening and not uh, watching, I'm just moving my hands.
that's
That's
right.
what thieves do. Uh, this I thought was a good opportunity to hint about the light and mushrooms. I don't know if these particular mushrooms react to light, but there's a campfire in there. So maybe you have some mushrooms on the wall that is illuminated brightly that are huge in this room. And this is
hmm
one way that you could hint at that information and convey that to the players.
hmm Yeah, that's good. These are little environmental storytelling that goes on, is these little clues for folks. I think is it's key and important again in a puzzle dungeon where you don't want to set up the puzzles so complexly that players start banging their heads against the wall. You do want to provide little hints and clues for those that are taking the time to search around, or those that maybe have some special abilities that give them extra information, or for those players that are just that curious and that observant.
Yep. We already talked about the puff balls and the other key doing sleep. I like them. Need some wandering encounters. I'm off to level 2 for the workspace here.
hmm
There's zombies here in key number 9 on level 2, flensing.
hmm
I wanted this to be zombies with like the sleep puffballs on them. So like you see them, maybe you have the light, maybe they kind of get bigger and they grow on the zombies and they're big old bursting bombs.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of you're exactly right. There's a lot of fun to be had with undead creatures and a wide variety of mushrooms. And and again, to your point, you could repeat some of the same types of mushrooms that you've been using. So maybe, yeah, maybe
This is
some of
where the
them all
players test their mastery.
exactly. Some of them turn into gaseous form. Yeah, you see, or some of them are, I think there's some mushrooms that turn you invisible. Is that,
That's
or do
right.
they float? Yeah. So some of the zombies disappear all of a sudden, but are still, still there or doing something. So
I love the enemies using the special items on their person, or from around this area, because it gives the players something to look forward to. I think the dude with the flaming sword who's coming after you, I want that. And
exactly.
seeing these zombies with that are turning invisible, like how are they doing that, and how can I get in on this?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think this is I mean, and to kind of go back to the Grendel Mendel conversation we had earlier, like this is a great way to variate zombies, which players have seen a lot before and are like, okay, they're slow moving and they maybe hit hard, but now they do all these funny tricks. And you're right, the players will be like, well, how are they doing this? Let's maybe have those from the beginning. Like, let's have them um, maybe one or two outside the dungeon, or again, to your point, like maybe to go back to the reason that things are happening, maybe every turn that they stay in that, I mean, using, hey, let's use Shadowdark's torch mechanic that every time the torch goes out, you add another entry into the random encounter table of like 3 zombies, so then it's like, then the next entry should be 4 zombies, then 5 zombies. So now you have 3 zombies, 4 zombies, 5 zombies, 6 zombies. You just keep
Yeah,
building them up as the players are
I dig it.
kind
That's
of
a fun way to do the clock.
yeah, disturbing everything. Yeah. And then that gives us a reason to really want to rush to resettle the shrine, because otherwise you're going to have all these zombie issues.
Yeah, dig it. All right, skipping over to key 11 here. There's a big old loom here. It's used to weave the fabric, the mycelium fabric, so the mushroom fabric, into kind of like a drape for bodies, I imagine.
Hmm.
And I thought this was neat. It says that the fabric can be fashioned into the equivalent of leather armor, which was fun, but not really interesting to me as a player. It would be more interesting if it was like the equivalent of chainmail or something that was light, or some kind of Shadow Dark equivalent there. But it doesn't have to be that here. This can be an optional bonus thing if they find something like the mice, the I'm not going to be able to pronounce this word, like this material elsewhere but stronger. They should be thinking, hey, didn't we see a loom where there was something else like this here? What happens if we stick this stuff in there? And they should be rewarded for that.
Yeah, I think maybe pieces of the loom are spread about the dungeon. So they're like, what is this? Maybe the goblins are wearing like little coats made of this stuff. And everybody's like, where did you get these?
That's
Um,
great, actually. Little pieces of the loom spread about. You need to construct the loom is one of the mini quests, right? If your hook is to perform the rites. It's another note that I had. I don't know what the rites are. I don't know where the bodies are supposed to go. There's an ossuary on the third floor. Are the bodies supposed to be processed there? I think there is a body there. I want that info as a GM so I can convey it to the players through the NPCs.
yeah, and I think this is another thing of maybe how to add some more purpose to each faction. Like, why don't you just kill all the factions? Well, you
Because they
can't,
know where the
you don't
stuff's
want to,
hidden. Sorry, go on.
yeah, yeah, no, 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 exactly. You don't want to turn the spirits or sanctify the ground or do something with your god because you need them to tell you, okay, how do we perform the rites to get all the bodies, like to recall the mushroom zombies to like settle back down or something like that.
Yes. So
Um,
something part of the ritual has gone wrong, and that's why
wrong.
these zombies start flooding out, because they are coming back to life.
Yeah.
Those precautions that people in the past have been taking are failing. you want to take this precaution again, fix it for everyone, and then you can use it for your patron. Dig it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Um, in the Loom, I think in the dungeon design document that I helped write with Josh, we did talk about how all dungeons should have something that makes players want to return to them, but maybe can't be moved out of the dungeon. And this Loom could be that. Like you could put this dungeon in your own world. You could have this special Loom, maybe that's like half built into the wall or has some big
Yeah.
mushroom around it.
It's a
And
resource that is
it's
shared by these factions, and you want to make nice with them so you could use it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe the poetry orc is trying to turn it into like some sort of like drum or some sort of piano or an organ or something. Maybe that's something that's happened to it.
I like it. Let's see. Going to level 3.
Hey, one thing I know this dungeon has levels, which is shaped very traditionally, but I think that there's not really a need to do that with this dungeon. I think it could just be all on one plane or one level,
Yeah.
and I think that that
They're
would also
effectively
make
just different areas.
I exactly, and instead of maybe having verticality that separate them, this is another reason to put certain puzzles or blocks or locks in front of these regions.
Totally.
Um, the players will see more obviously.
All right. I'm going to speed along. We are really over time, I think. Yeah, we already mentioned the light doing something different to certain types of fungi. I would say keep it the same. Repetition is good. It's a good lesson for players. I noticed the partially collapsed passage. That's a nice lock. Want more locks like that so I can use my keys like the gaseous form. I mentioned speaking languages. I don't know if the ettercaps or the spiders speak that language. I assume maybe they don't now. Oh, yes, and I mentioned the ossuary where the body should be. Sorry, am I moving too fast? What you got?
No, no, no. I think I think I know a lot of my notes by the time we get more down to the third level are kind of very similar to a lot of what I was seeing, on the second levels, which is I think there's just um, need to just further kind of enhance differences in the faction and what exactly is the puzzle here? Like, what is this
Yeah.
faction trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And why are the other two factions interfering with that? And so, how does that relate to what the players can or cannot do?
Yep. All right, so 15, they mention one of these ettercaps, Ragenhild, the ettercap leader. This should be in their bio. It says they're debating how long she can hold out before eating the goblins who look too tasty to resist. Stick that in the stick that in their bio. That's where I want to see it.
And it's a cool again another timer, but we need a reason that it matters. So what if they eat all the goblins? Like what does that really? Why do we want to stop that? You know, the goblins just came to the shrine, but they're not eating any of the mushrooms or anything like that. So what you know, yeah, that would just be why don't we want? Why do players need to spend time convincing the intercaps like don't eat anyone?
Yeah, they need a reason for the goblins to stick around.
Yeah,
Maybe they produce naturally what the loom needs. I don't know. Why wouldn't they have
I
been
mean,
around from before? Hmm.
or maybe because there's a spot in there where like maybe maybe the goblins are small enough to get somewhere that the that the bigger ettercaps and then the players can't. Maybe there's some more inner sanctum pieces of that they need to go. So they need to get their cooperation.
All right. Last thing I have on level 3, the very last bullet here for the last key, 16, it says breathing in the spores restores 1d6 hit points and grants the crawler the ability to communicate telepathically with any other creature in the shrine for 1 hour. Once they've received this benefit, they're immune to it until they complete a rest. I don't think there's a need for that. I think they can keep this communication. They know what it does. I don't think there's a reason to negate it around there.
I wondered if there was an interesting mechanism where maybe the whole lower level was covered in spores, and maybe that's something the players, yeah, you can breathe in it for a little bit and you gain that ability, but you also, again, there's another timer or a poison effect that kicks in, or everybody hates poison in video games, right? Because it's obnoxious. So maybe there's some sort of mutagenic effect, like, yes, you're healing damage, but it's because mushrooms are growing on your arm, so
damn.
maybe you might turn into one of the mycelium.
That's an interesting way to keep them from using it too much, right? If you did want it to limit it. Yeah, each time you use it, you roll.
Yeah, but maybe the goblins are immune. Maybe that's the reason that the goblins are able to hang out down here. The spiders aren't, like, they turn into like those, weird ants that get zombied IRL. So they don't like getting in that area. And the goblins, there are no noses down there, so they don't want to hang out down there.
You could
so
use,
maybe, yeah.
I was going to say you could use them to as interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that's it. There's creatures on the back. I would move the Mushroom Folk stat block in with the Mushroom Folk factions, so I wouldn't have to page flip. If I'm going to look up who a Mushroom Folk is and what they want, I also want to know what their stats are, I think.
Yeah, just a generic stat for everyone.
Yeah.
And then just a little variant for each one, but even at work, I would just be like double the goblin stat line,
But that's all I got for the nitty gritty. I think we got into the overarching stuff pretty well. I think definitely the wandering counter table, the tensions, the faction motivations. What else were we talking about? The puzzle elements with the mushrooms.
Yeah, I think just for the author, I would recommend just, I think from what I've read, in their head, they have an idea about how these factions are interacting and what they provide, and really just double down on that element. If the puzzle is supposed to be the social connection between the three factions, it's really enhance that. And what is each faction contributing such that the players need to keep them all around? As we said, the mushroom spirits know the ritual to stop the undead, but only the goblins can perform the ritual because they're immune to the spores. But the spiders are creating the block maybe in the middle because they want to eat any of the goblins that come near them, and they keep building webs to block off entry, and so you need to...
I like the literal webs. I like the social webs.
Webs, yeah. And the mycelium webs.
Yes.
We got it all.
Awesome. Do you have anything else for Forgotten Shine 01?
No, I think it's, again, I think the author's chosen some fun elements. I think writing dungeons is hard, and particularly puzzle dungeons adds a little more element there. So I highly recommend to keep going at it. Give it a little love and attention, and then I think run it. I think the author said they hadn't had an opportunity to run it yet, so gather up some friends and give it a spin.
All right. This has been Forgotten Shrine 01 on Puzzle Dungeon Workshop, part of Puzzle Dungeon Jam, which you can get to and still access the resources and see all the entries and everything, even if the jam's ended. It's www.puzzledungeon.com/jam. Get you right there. It's magic. Before we go, I want to shill my own thing real quick. It's my own puzzle dungeon, available at www.puzzledungeon.com/tower. It's called the Familiar Tower. I'm working on it with Skullboy. Skullboy's doing the art, Sam Mamelli, and Sam Sorensen is doing the editing and the layout now. We're in like the end stages here. We've already done the editing. Sorensen's got a test layout out. I got some really beautiful artwork from Skullboy where it's tying together. I hope to have some really pretty pictures to show off in addition to this pretty soon for Zine Month in February when this is launching. If you go to this backer kit page, which you can get to from that URL, and press this sign up button, I will be eternally happy. Since apparently your success in this is somewhat related to this number going up. So, you know, that's less stress for me, which is fun. If you want to help me out, that'd be fun by pressing the button. It's a wizard tower escape room, and it will put smiles on your players' faces. This is a fun one to run at the table and meet space. You don't need to, but if you have a prop wizard tower, which I've included instructions on how you can make one out of an oatmeal box. My son, who's going to turn 5 this month, actually helped me make the one which is featured here in a picture and in an animated GIF, by the way. It's a fun time. It's a good time. You're going to like it. If you like Zelda Puzzle Dungeons, you'll like this one. So check it out. puzzledungeon.com/tower. Click the button. I will thank you. I think that's all I got. Warren, do you have any plugs you want to give besides Nightwick Abbey?
No, I don't think anything else. I mean, yeah, if people are interested in a fantastic dungeon of the undead and one that has a lot of that old school flavor, I highly recommend checking out Miranda Elkin's Nightwick Abbey In Places Deep. I think I have to say that if you enjoyed the dungeon design document, of course, there's the Castle Automatic that's coming out, or it's in the in funding right now. So definitely check that out if you enjoy Mega Dungeons. And other than that, everyone needs to start blogging. So get out there, put up your first post a day, talk about puzzle dungeons, talk about what you do with spiders, how do you make goblins different, and what a mycelium priest really want. And that'll get you going.
Indeed. And I know that we've talked about it, but I forgot to mention for those of you listening, Josh McCrowell and Warren D co-wrote the Dungeon Designs course, which is available at dungeons.hismajestytheworm.games. Subtitle is Or How to Kill a Party in 30 Rooms or Less. So this is a masterclass course on creating your own dungeon. And if you're looking to get into that for the Puzzle Dungeon or not, it's actually one of the resources that I link to. So go there and make a dungeon and blog, as Warren says.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that link. And yeah, how about blog about your dungeon? Go to the dungeon design document, design 30 rooms that are going to kill your players, or do it in less time, and then tell us all about it on the blog. Just kick that going.
Love it. Thank you, Warren. Thanks for coming. This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
And really cool.
Absolutely. We both kept our noses through the end of this, so I think that's really good. It's been a great time. It's been wonderful to talk about dungeon design, and look forward to maybe doing it again, and look forward to seeing you at GaryCon.
Right on. Me too. All right. Take care. Ciao.
Take care.